December, the second day of winter. Yesterday, of course, was the winter solstice. And for weirdos out there, they're cheering because now the days get longer. Well, you're not going to notice it for a while, guys, so calm down. That is a thing that will happen in all its good time. Anyway, no, I'm not wearing makeup today because I didn't feel like putting any on. So, kind of wanted to talk about my favorite Christmas movies since I'm probably not going to do any videos unless something really big happens during the holidays or something interesting that comes up. So, because I want to have spend time between now and at least New Year's Eve, just kind of hanging around with my husband and the family and everything. So, let's get on to it. So, I'm not going to put them on any numbers except for the last one. And of course, the thumbnail is from the movie Holiday Inn. Holiday Inn premiered not at Christmas time in 1942, starring Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, Marjorie Reynolds, and oh God, what was her name? Anyway, the lady that played the other dancer. ABC, and well, I'll explain why I love it so much. It's literally one of my favorite movies beyond just what it's about. Let's go ahead. There are, I'm going to say 5, but some other ones and specials may creep into this. First one's got to be A Christmas Story. Now, when it premiered in 1983, it was a dud. For some reason, I really don't think the audiences were prepared for a movie like that, which is weird because in the 80s we were still pretty normal cornball, family-friendly stuff going on. So I don't, hey, cross element, what's going on? And it's about a little boy who, and this has been proven, I was right. It takes place before World War II. Why? Because the sequel, A Christmas Story Christmas, Ralphie himself says something about the events of 33 years ago, and it's 1973 in that TV show movie on HBO Plus or HBO Max. So guess what? A Christmas Story takes place in 1940. Now, it's kind of anachronistic because, in some ways, because there are pieces of music like Bing Crosby singing with the Andrews Sisters, Jingle Bells, which came out later during the war. But if you look at how it's all kind of, you get the feeling that it's before a big turn of events. Now you gotta understand, 1940, the U.S. was still in the Great Depression. Okay, my dad always liked to say that the person who got the U.S. out of the Great Depression was Adolf Hitler. All right, started shit. Bunch of young men who didn't have jobs had to go. 16 million in uniform to go kick Nazi ass. So there you go. But anyway, I'm gonna turn it this way so you guys can see my tree. So anyway, so it takes place in 1940, and the style of the clothes, except I think Melinda Dillon's hair. If you go back and look at my grandmothers, they dressed like old ladies when they were her age. Okay, they had a way of dressing when they turned 40. Now maybe she wasn't 40. Darren McGavin is the old man, obviously much older than she was. And that, I'm gonna shock all the feminists out there, that's kind of the way it was back then. Okay. Men could be 10, 15 years older than their wives. It's just a man, once he got settled, had a career, could afford a family, then he would get married. Okay, that is the way it is. And, lots of times though, you'd see couples that were the same age going off into the world together with really not a whole lot, like my mom and dad. My dad, my dad was a year older than my mom. So he was born in 21. My mom was born in 22. Okay. Um, anyway, now I don't have anybody watching. Anybody in chat? Um, anyway, it's very interesting to me how this movie came together. It was based on a book called, oh God, I can't remember. I have the book too. It's somewhere. Anyway, sorry guys. All right. Okay, thanks, Lon Elemental. But it's based on the movie's A Christmas Story is based on a book. And it's about the author's Jane Shepherd, who narrates the movie, by the way. He, as a 10-year-old, 9-year-old boy, wanted a Red Ryder BB gun. Now, here are the fictionalized elements. Red Ryder, Daisy, still in existence. They do make BB guns. We have a couple around here. They did not make a BB gun with the compass in the stock and this thing which tells time. It's a sundial. They didn't make them like that, but that's part of the movie. And back in the early 40s, late 30s, and all the way up to when I was a kid in the 70s, each of these towns all over the country had really nice, and I mean nice, high-end department stores. My mom worked at one in La Crosse called Dorflinger's. And you could get really like very expensive China. I mean, high-end quality China, clothing, shoes, you name it. These stores were really something to see, and they would do the windows. And it was one of the big moments at Thanksgiving where the stores would unveil the windows, and they would put the toys that they had in the windows, and if they were electronic back then, like, dolls that maybe walked a little bit, talked, things on tracks that went up and down, these things, train sets, all that kind of stuff. So Ralphie and his friends, Flick and Schwartz, are standing there in the window with their nose pressed up against it, looking at all these beautiful things that they could have. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Ralphie's mom and dad had money. When my dad saw the movie, when it came out on video, he sat down and watched it with us after dinner one night at my sister's house before Christmas. Is like, those people have money. And my mom said that too. Okay. They have money. Trust me, Grandma and Grandpa on both sides did not have that much money. Not by any means. Okay. Now, if you look back on it now, we see what they have and say their house wasn't big. They had an old furnace. It wasn't an old furnace. It was just a bad furnace. Technology, not really wonderful. A coal burning furnace. Everybody had those. And you would say, well, they have a lot of money. Yes, they have a lot of money. What did Dad do? He could have been a banker. He could have been, hey, Star Wars community. He could have been a lawyer. He could have owned a hardware store. We don't know. But obviously, Dad had an Oldsmobile that ran. Dad had to jerry-rig a lot of stuff because people didn't want to waste money on, well, I have to get this repaired. Oh, I have to get a new one. No, they would use something until it literally fell apart because that's the Depression. And even before that, you didn't throw shit away. Okay, you made it work. Okay, trust me, I saw my own father jerry-rigging plumbing with hoses for cars. We don't want to get into that. Anyway, so these kids are gonna, what they see in there, they may get that. My dad liked to tell a story about, there's a hardware store in my hometown, and it's still there, by the way. They had a BB gun in the window. It cost $1. And every morning, my grandmother would give him a couple of pennies, a nickel, to get breakfast. Now, gotta remember, my dad grew to be 6'3". Okay, so there was shoveling food in. All right, a lot. He'd walk past the bakery on the way to school, Catholic school every morning, and see donuts and rolls and this and that, and he would get breakfast. Okay, he could never save a freaking dollar for a BB gun, and that's this time period. So that gun is something every little boy wanted, but your parents had to have money to be able to afford it. Okay, my grandparents did not. All right. So Ralphie's guy's eyes set on the Red Ryder BB gun. Schwartz, who knows? Flick, who knows? So, and it's all about his adventures in trying to persuade some grown-up to get him that damn BB gun. He's got a little brother named Randy, and Randy is they needed a little sister to add emphasis because he's literally just a bag of at one point there's a bully named Scott Farkas and his little buddy Grover Dill. Okay. And they used to wait around for everybody to leave school and grab, one of Ralphie's friends or some other kid and beat him up. Okay. So they pick on Ralphie. Okay. Ralphie had just been let down. I know, I was talking about that, Austin. Ralphie had just been cut down by his teacher. He had written a theme, which back then you wrote essays, themes, to practice your handwriting skills and being able to put words down on paper that are grammatically correct, because back then that was a big important thing, that you write coherently and you rate it. And she gave him a C+ and said he'd shoot his eye out. That's the joke. Okay, you'll shoot your eye out. His mother starts it, the teacher starts it, and when we get to Santa Claus. So anyway, Ralphie's walking, he's dejected. He gets hit in the face with an ice ball. And he's crying and moping. He sees Farkas and Grover Dill, and they come after him. Ralphie beats the living hell out of Scott Farkas. Beats the hell out of him. And Ralphie's mother, Melinda Dillon, ends up finding him, and she takes him home and she watches his face, tells him to hold a face cloth on his face, and you see him laying in bed and he's crying. And there's a scene where Melinda Dillon is sitting there and she's making red cabbage, which is actually really good, by the way. And she hears Randy. He's underneath the sink, hiding under the sink. And she goes, "What are you doing under there?" And he goes, "Daddy's gonna kill Ralphie." And she goes, "Daddy's not going to kill Ralphie." And then she says, "You want some milk and cookies?" And he comes flying out. She hands him both and shuts the door on him. Weird kid, man. So it goes on, and Ralphie decides he's gonna tell Santa Claus. So he's in the line at the department store, Higbee's. And Dad and Mom go off to go Christmas shopping. And he finally gets up there. Randy can't tell him Santa what he wants, so he just sends him down the slide. The kid before Randy peed his pants and screamed, and he sent him down the slide. And the kid was really weird. I like the Wizard of Oz. I like the Tin Man. It's like, oh God. Really? So Ralphie gets up there and doesn't remember what he wants. So Santa says, "How about a nice football?" And Ralphie's like, "Okay, nice football." He gets on the slide, and all of a sudden he scrambles back and he goes, "I want a Red Ryder 2009 range model air rifle." It's like that. Santa goes, "You'll shoot your eye out, kid. Ho, ho, ho." And puts his boot on his forehead and sends him down the slide. I hope they do. I really do, because that was the way you knew Christmas started and then Christmas was over. I mean, at least not the religious aspect, because Christmas actually goes to February, if the church observed that. Did you know that? But we keep all the trees up all year long. Or not all year long, but until the 6th of January. So, you've got, here's the wildlife tree. Here's Santa. And then the big tree. And we've got the nativity scene. But, as you're thinking about A Christmas Story, it really is kind of a thing that makes you kind of laugh. I'm going to show you something. And it's really kind of cool. But when I was a little girl, there was a store called Toy Fair in La Crosse. And no, I have more, but I'm going to show you this first. And this place, I don't have all of them on though, Toy Fair had Breyer horses. And I fell in love with them. And there was a white stallion they had in the window. And this is not him. When my sister had to sell the house, a lot of my stuff was there, and I think it ended up going to an antique store, but this is from 1976. And this is what I wanted. And this was my Red Ryder BB gun. So he's out. I should actually put him under the tree. But we've got several trees. Get out of the way, dog. The Christmas elf. It snowed. Now it's raining. And it is not fun to be outside. But here's the crystal tree, as you see. And we'll go out here. But so the reason why I love this Christmas Story so much is because it's a lot of fun remembering the things you wanted so badly for Christmas. I'm actually going to talk about a Muppets Christmas Carol. Maybe I'll talk about that next. But it is something. That's why I think A Christmas Story. Sorry, guys, I'm turning on the military tree. See? And the blue and white tree. But it really resonated with me because of that Christmas of 1976. I didn't, I kind of hoped I would get that for Christmas, and I begged for it, and it started on my collection. I had hundreds of Breyer horses. The next year I got Man of War, which will always be my favorite because he was my favorite horse ever. And my horse Kay is actually related to him. She's in it. This is the blue and white tree. But just to show you, I've got some A Christmas Story ornaments. Here's Randy. But they're all here. In the end, Randy gets his BB gun. Dad, the old man, here, I'll show you something else, got it for him because he was the one that listened. Oh, come on, you're not going to work now? This thing has sound to it, and it's not working, of course. I got to change the...
I want an official Combat Action 200 shot range model air rifle.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
And there you go. So, I got a lot of those. But what's really great is that what I love about A Christmas Story is that the dad is the hero in this because he actually listened to his son. I want a BB gun. He had a BB gun when he was a kid, right? So naturally he understood why Ralphie wanted that gun, and he got it for him. So, they end up getting ready to have dinner, a turkey. The turkey ends up being eaten by the Bumpus Hounds, which here's the Bumpus Hound right here. See? Say hi, Kojak. And they have to go to the Chinese place. Excuse me, I had to blow my nose. They have to go to the Chinese place to have Christmas dinner. So they end up eating Peking duck, which is just hilarious. And it's a really touching story. It kind of gives you a glimpse into kind of like what life was back in the early 1940s before World War II. And when you looked at it, 1940, now there was a draft. That's why you see people in uniform. Okay, it wasn't during the war. It was, well, the war was going on. We were lending or leasing whole destroyer fleets to the British and their allies. And obviously, if it's 1940, then it's before the Russians were invaded by Germany. So, but we were sticking our toes into it. And it was probably the wise choice to have the draft, I think, back then. But that's why you saw the young man and woman and the officers in those uniforms. Now, there's not really a whole lot more I can say beyond I love the movie because of the relationships. The parents are great. They act like parents. The Battle of the Leg Lamp is hysterical because my dad probably wouldn't like a leg lamp, but I'll give you a story. One year, Mom and I went out to Wyoming to see my brothers and sister who were out there in God's country, which I consider Wyoming and Montana to be. And Dad decided while she was gone, he himself was going to upholster the dining room chairs and this big rocking chair that we had gotten from his uncle who had just passed away. And it was back in the early 80s, so there was still like that day glow orange, and our carpet was kind of that rust color. Obviously, my dad was colorblind. And when we got back, the dining room chairs and that rocking chair had been reupholstered in crushed velvet. I want you to wrap your minds around how bad that was. Mom was like, "Oh, Bill, it's so interesting," you know. And, you know, he was very proud of himself, so we kind of said, okay, it's fine. I mean, Mom was horrified. But they stayed that color. They stayed that way till the day he died and after. It was pretty funny. But that was just one of those things where what I love about the movie is that it kind of hits you in your own personal space because everybody growing up in the 70s and 80s actually have experiences similar because of their parents. Okay, it's a way, and I really wish I could go back to those times because it was a lot better. And we didn't have Wokosos, that's for Polly, telling kids they didn't have to be boys or girls in school. And no one would have ever thought of voting for Joe Biden for president. It's like, even the Democrats were too smart for that back then. Anyway, let's go to the next one. Now, I'm going to talk about 5. The next one is going to probably be A Muppet's Christmas Carol. And I'm only going to talk about it real quick. We know the story. I do think that it was made right. I mean, Brian Henson produced it. He did Kermit's voice. Frank Oz was, of course, part of it. The big thing about this movie was they got Michael Caine, who insisted I'm not basically what we call breaking the fourth wall and kind of be cheesy about acting with the Muppets. I'm going to play Scrooge. And he played the hell out of Scrooge. Okay. The music is great. It's kind of dark and maudlin and morbid. But when you look at the story, it's supposed to be. Okay, it's the story of Ebenezer Scrooge is not a fun story. It's a redemption arc. No, I haven't, but it's one that he has to go through a lot of shit to get to the end, if you know what I mean. It happens in one night. But just the effects and the way they put it together was just it's a great production. It's an exquisite production, and very much unlike other Muppet movies. Okay. And the sad thing about it was Jim Henson had just passed away from pneumonia that when it came out, like before it came out. So in memory of Jim Henson, and then another guy who passed away, who was part of the production. So it was really, it's kind of sad. It made me cry. Really, I mean, a lot. It came out the Christmas my father passed away. So there's a lot of emotion to that. Now, I'm going to add a movie called George C. Scott's A Christmas Carol. Now, everyone talks about the 1953 A Christmas Carol and Patrick Stewart's. My favorite is George C. Scott's. It is, I think, and I think it was a Hallmark movie, by the way. All right. When they actually decided to really spend money on production and get actors that were big time. It is mind-blowingly produced. You've got so many, like Joanne Whalley-Kilmer plays his sister. Susanna York plays Mrs. Cratchit. David Warner plays Bob Cratchit. Roger Reeves plays his nephew Fred. It's just, Frank Finlay plays Marley, Ghost. He was freaky. When he does this, and he's got the thing on top of his head, because when you die, your mouth would hang open like this. They take a kerchief to shut your jaw. And he takes the thing off and his mouth goes, much, like that. And I went, ah. Came out in 1984. But it's magnificent. And George C. Scott, is, and the guy that played the Equalizer, played the Ghost of Christmas Present. George C. Scott was brilliant. Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to say this. That guy is one of the greatest actors that ever lived, period. Never gave a bad performance. Even in The Exorcist 3, which is a movie I like. Freaking awesome. Just, he was fantastic as Scrooge. It's a movie you need to see. Get it on, you could get it on pay-per-view or whatever. Buy it off the TV. Find where it's playing and watch it. Well, now we'll get into Christmas Vacation. Now I'm going to take a different opinion from Script Doctor and Tom about, well, Tom, I agree with Tom. We all know who Clark Griswold is. He's the ultimate family man. The ultimate family man who likes to flirt with young supermodel type women, except for the girl in this movie, who's got a schnoz that my horse would be afraid of. That, and I can't remember her first name, but her last name's Coppola. That the girl that plays Mary, the underwear seller, her nose is this big. I mean, it's like, that thing has its own, it has planets orbiting it. Anyway, it starts out Clark in they're going on an adventure to pick out their Christmas tree. And the hijinks that happens, they run into these rednecks driving this piece of shit truck So Clark gets pissed off at him because they're not driving the way they should be. And he tries to pass them and he ends up being stuck underneath a logging truck. I'm going to say this. The show is supposed to be set in the outskirts of Chicago. But those scenes were filmed in Colorado. Okay. I know that for a fact. Because there's no place like that in Illinois. I've been to a lot of places in Illinois, and you find me foothills like that. There aren't any. It's a prairie state for a reason. It's flat as a pancake. Tornado trap. All right. And they end up flying through the air, going through the Christmas Tree Farms sign at the Christmas Tree Farm. And they've got their two kids, Audrey and Rusty. And I'm going to be honest, I cannot fucking stand Juliette Lewis. And I hate Audrey. She's disrespectful to her grandparents. She's disrespectful to her parents. She's one of those teenagers that you'd like, just go to your room and I don't want to see your face. I don't want to see you. You're just, no, you're not. I don't care what your hormones are telling you. You're pissing me off. Thank you, Lance. And they are walking and they're getting cold. And Clark is just completely, dialed in on finding the perfect tree. And he finally finds it. In fact, if you look at my uploads from the last couple of days, I've got a Christmas intro where I've got Han and Luke looking for a Christmas tree, and it's the Griswold family Christmas tree. Just watch it for that. And that's where it starts because Clark immediately forgot to bring a saw. So he digs it out. It's got this great big old tree, this great big old root thing on the end of it. Put it on the family roadster and off they go back to town. And that's where the fun begins because their neighbors see them and their neighbors are yuppie. Think of woke assholes before woke was a thing. And those are the yuppie shitheads, all right? And Clark does everything he can to annoy them, okay? Basically, when Todd asks, Clark, where are you going to put a tree that size? And Clark goes, bend over and I'll show you. And, Todd's like, how dare you talk to me like that, Griswold? And Clark goes, I wasn't talking to you. It was just, freaking, that shit was funny. That was some funny shit there. And then it just goes on. You got the Christmas tree being decorated and it's way too big for the living room. You've got the grandparents showing up. You've got that chaos going on. Clark trying to decorate the house outside, put lights on the outside, and all the chaos and the shenanigans that go on. And he falls off the roof, lands in the bushes. He gets stuck and slips, and he's hanging on like that on the rain gutter. Ice goes through the neighbor's window and blows up their CD player. Back when CD players probably were like $1,000 a piece. I haven't seen those and I got to. Maybe I'll look for them later. Thank you, Austin, for telling me that. It goes on. Lights don't work. Clark loses his shit, beats up on his Santa and a tiny reindeer thing out in the front yard. And then Ellen, the wife played by Beverly D'Angelo, goes like this. Because she's trying to figure out why is this working? You have, and of course, when you look at the way he's got everything plugged in, it's like, it's gonna start a fire, you dipshit. She goes out to the garage and flips a switch, and the lights work. And chaos ensues in the neighbor's house because it's like way bright. So while they're outside, admiring the lights, Cousin Eddie and his wife and his two kids and their dog Snots show up. In this RV, which is basically described as a tenement on wheels. It's a piece of shit. And they came for Christmas, didn't tell anybody, they just invited themselves. And so that's a plot point. That's a subplot. Eddie is basically the cousin that you're kind of stuck with. I mean, part of the family, it's like, oh God, do we have to admit he's even part of our family? And everybody with a big family, or with extended family have people like that. Just go through all the adventures there. Meanwhile, Clark is waiting for his Christmas bonus, fantasizing about the girl at the department store, showing him all the fancy new lingerie he's going to buy for Ellen, but he is imagining her naked in the pool he wants to put in. Because Clark is a man, he's a pig about that shit. And men are visual, okay? And that's the way they are, that's nature, you can't change it. So he finds out through Eddie's daughter that they didn't have any presents for them, they didn't have any money, confronts Eddie about it, ends up buying the kids a bunch of presents. Then they go sledding, and Clark takes this new, basically spray that makes, so when you fry food it doesn't stick, like Pam, sprays it on a saucer sled, and literally goes ballistic down a hill, across a nice fishing village, through a parking lot, and into a Goodwill box at Walmart. Okay. Yeah, then you've got Cousin Eddie in his knee, mid-thigh bathrobe, his Mongolian fur cap, with a cigar and a can of beer, cheap, a bush beer, emptying the chemical toilet into the rain sewer, which is illegal as fuck. Okay. Clark is sitting in the window watching him. He goes, oh, the silent majesty of the winter's day, an asshole in his bathrobe emptying a chemical toilet into our rain sewer. There you go. And the movie ends up, Clark gets it, instead of getting the bonus that he expected, and he had to float the check till he got the bonus. He got a membership in the Jelly of the Month Club from his company. Loses his shit. But his great aunt Bethany shows up with the cat wrapped up in a box. Gotta let the cat out. Cat chews the cords to the tree, electrocutes itself, and dies under a chair, so they dump the chair out. I don't know, but I want to get to the other movies here, so I'm going to wrap this up. Maybe that's a conversation for another day, about who I cast for that. We go through all these hijinks, and then Eddie goes and kidnaps his boss, Clark's boss, played by Brian Doyle Murray, does the chat know whose brother he is? The hint is his last name, Murray. He's Bill Murray's oldest brother, okay, or older brother. He's brought back in dog chains, mouth taped up, to be confronted by Clark Griswold and family. And he sees just taking away the bonus to employees that are pretty valuable. I mean, Clark is obviously the head of a division that actually seems like it's going quite well. So Clark gets the bonuses are reinstated. He gets his bonus plus 20%. So he's going to be able not only to put the pool in, but to bring people back for summer to christen the pool. He's very excited about that. And then the cops show up, break the new Christmas tree, because while all this is going on, Uncle Lewis, with his cigar, sets the tree on fire. The tree that he had dug out of the ground in the beginning. So he throws out the tree, and he cuts down the tree in the front yard, smashes the neighbor's window, puts a tree in the house. Squirrel runs out. Snots chases the squirrel around. The neighbors get into an argument confronting Clark, and she finally and Julie Louis Dreyfus, who's playing Margot, stomps over there to confront him about breaking their window with the tree, and the squirrel lands here, and Snots, who's a Rottweiler, he ain't small, lands on top of her. She goes walking back, limps back. Todd opens the door, and she beats the shit out of him. Okay. And then after the kidnapping occurs, the cops show up there. They show up at Clark's house, and that's the resolution. All right. It's a fun movie. The music is great. You bring Bing Crosby and the Andrews sisters singing Mele Kalikimaka. I mean, during the fantasy scene. It's just a great movie. It's was it number three? Number three? So we got, yeah, because the two Scrooges are kind of like that. Number two is an old movie, White Christmas. Danny, and it was mentioned, and this is the fourth one. White Christmas is mentioned by Clark in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Danny Kaye, Bing Crosby again, Rosemary Clooney, and Vera Ellen, who is the dancer, the sister. And it's basically about, it opens up during the winter of 1944 in Europe, and you got a bunch of American soldiers taking time out. They're back behind the lines getting arrested. And Bing Crosby's playing an entertainer that's in uniform. Danny Kaye is playing this private who's kind of like his like backup. Like he plays this music box, and they've got a way to have music, so there's dancing and and they get bombed out. They have a new general. Their general is leaving. And he's played by Dean Jagger. Dean Jagger, if you ever meet really good generals, I mean, guys that you can imagine seeing action and leading people into battle, Dean Jagger looks like what they look like, okay? We have friends who did that on the March up to Fallujah. Not a whole lot difference. Now they're Marines compared to Army, but really. So the movie then goes into Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby partner with each other and they have an act. And back in the early 50s, there used to be floor shows at nightclubs where you could go to a New York club, have a nice dinner, get some really nice champagne or cocktails, and watch famous entertainers. Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, you name it, sang. There'd be dancing and all the rest of the stuff. And so they have this act, and it goes all, and it's very famous. Make a lot of money. Ends up, Danny Kaye decides it's time to slow down. Gets a hold of, gets a letter from these sisters from this one of their war buddies. They meet him in Florida. The girls, Rosemary Clooney, Vera Ellen, and the Haynes sisters. They do their thing, and already there's a mutual attraction. Bing Crosby for Rosemary Clooney and Danny Kaye for Vera Ellen, and it goes on from there. And they end up at a ski resort with no snow in Vermont. So they find out the general that had left turned over his command to another guy, ran the inn, wasn't making any money, and they end up deciding they were going to help him. And that's really the gist of the movie, and it's about relationships and things like that, but it's the second time we hear the song White Christmas. Okay, lots of singing and dancing. Vera Ellen was basically known as the high kick girl. She died at the age of 60 from cancer. And I would surmise that she had a lot of health troubles going through her life. And I would surmise that she was bulimic and anorexic, really thin. Beautiful dancer, but there's a point where you're like, eat a hamburger with cheese, okay, just in a great big, 400-calorie bun. Put some meat on those bones, chica. There's a fit, and then there's what the fuck. But it's a great movie. And in the end, they surprised the general because all the guys that they fought with in their division, as many as that could, showed up 10 years later in uniform, the uniforms that they could wear that would fit, with their wives in tow for Christmas Eve on TV with the general. That was the thing. And it's a Irving Berlin musical kind of extravagant. It's beautiful. So that's number 2. Number 1 is the first movie, White Christmas, which is the greatest selling single of all time, was ever heard. Irving Berlin's Holiday Inn. And it's about, same thing, an act that does, clubs, club dates, a dancing and singing act with Fred Astaire. And they play partners, and Virginia, Virginia, let me just a second, I'm gonna look this up. Right, Kojak. All right. Okay. Now, Virginia. So it starred Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, Marjorie Reynolds, and Virginia Dale. Okay, I want to say Mayo, and it's like, no, it's not her. Virginia Dale plays Lila Dixon, who is the woman in the movie, and they're kind of fighting over her. These guys are not, they're not really sympathetic characters, but they are. And who plays, Walter Abel plays Danny Reed, their manager. Ends up that Bing Crosby is deciding he wants to leave show business to have a farm in Connecticut before Connecticut became overbuilt with dumpster fire neighborhoods, and way too many rich people. And he's gonna run the farm, and he's got Lila as his fiance. Well, she decides to dump him because she wants to keep dancing. And Ted Hanover, played by Fred Astaire, basically convinces her that he loves her too. So Bing Crosby's left by himself. And is pissed off, so he leaves and decides farming's really not for him. But the house is huge. I mean, think my house is huge. Think of a house 3, 4, 5 times bigger. Okay, it was a big freaking house. And so he decides to open an inn that would only be open on holidays, calling it Holiday Inn, and that's the gist of the story. Bing Crosby writes all the music. His character, who is Jim Hardy, writes all the music, hires the band, and basically comes back to New York to tell Ted and Danny and Lila about the club that he's opening, and runs into this girl who ran into Danny Reed at the florist at the airport, named Linda Mason, played by Marjorie Reynolds, and basically that's the love interest. She shows up the next day. they get they fall into a snowbank, and while their clothes are drying, he plays her White Christmas, and that's the first time you ever hear it. The thing I love about this movie is that it's fun. It's simple. You are drawn in by the music. There's a song called "You're Easy to Dance With," sung by Fred Astaire to Virginia Dale during their show, and I had a really weird experience with that at a antique store that I think before Halloween, if I remember to do a show about that, I'll tell you about that, because it was, you know, do I believe in ghosts? Yes. Do I believe? Yeah, the supernatural is real. Okay. Too many unexplicable things have gone on that I've been witness to, that my husband's been witness to. Oh boy, do we have a... All right, there. All right, so Holiday Inn is just a simple story. It's a musical, but it's not, because they don't tell the story through the music. The music is just part of the movie. Ends up, two producers from Hollywood went to see the show, wanted to make a movie about it, and basically the character of Bing Crosby, Jim Hardy writes all the music for it, and they take with them Ted and Linda Mason, who was kind of then unfianced to Jim Hardy, but when she finds out Jim Hardy tried to keep her from meeting those producers, she ran off to Hollywood. And he shows up in the end and basically sweeps her off her feet. I am going to let you guys go pretty soon, but I just wanted to add this. I wanted to explain Bing Crosby a little bit. First off, if you have any bad feelings about him, or believe the stories his son Gary wrote, don't. That the book he wrote. Gary Crosby has since come out and said what he did was wrong. He made up a lot of that shit. Bing Crosby did have sons that had a lot of problems. Part of the reasons for a lot of the problems was Crosby's wife was sick and didn't tell anybody. She had cancer. Okay, Dixie. And she died, I think, in 1940. And it was, you've got a dad whose job it is to travel, and kids who don't understand that. Okay, now, when Bing Crosby met his second wife, Catherine, those kids from that marriage were like, we don't know who they're talking about, but that was never our father. So, kind of take that into context. And also, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, Clark Gable was not the king of Hollywood. It was Bing Crosby. He was box office gold. Okay, why? The country needed someone who was just kind of there, who could sing, who could act, who was funny, but who made them feel good for an hour or two. Bing Crosby fit that. And he was the highest selling actor in Hollywood, even bigger than John Wayne. Okay, those are some big shoes. Okay, so when I talk about Bing Crosby, him being into these shows, movies that I love, that's what he did. He was known for Christmas specials and Christmas music. His last special that came out after he died, if you go and look for him and David Bowie singing together in that special, it's on YouTube. So I would suggest you guys kind of sit down, relax, and put that on because it's one of the most wonderful moments of two generations meeting. And it making sense. Okay. So I just want to talk about Christmas movies. This may be my last video until New Year's Eve. I'm not sure, unless something happens. It's not like I'm going to be completely gone. If something goes on, like, Cameron gets another big link or whatever, or something like that, I'll talk about it. More happens with Iger and FTX, I'll talk about it. All right. But this is a time for family and getting ready, and I've got cookies to pack to take to the neighbors, and I gotta get that done. So I'll see you guys around the galaxy. I might jump in on Christmas Eve to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and I'll be wearing my new flannel PJs. I always have new ones for Christmas Eve. And I'll see you guys around the galaxy. Behave, be safe, and talk at you later. Probably see you in the next year or New Year's Eve. I think I'm good doing a live show on New Year's Eve. See you around the galaxy.